Emily St. John Mandel is an award-winning novelist with 5 books under her belt. I've never read anything by her, so I thought this novella, with its small size, would be a perfect introduction to her work for me. Before I get into the review though, can we just have a moment for the cover? Just look how amazing this gold looks under flash. Like, it just glimmers. I know we shouldn't judge books by their covers, but I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this in the shop, it was one of the reasons why I picked it up in the first place. But anyway, what is this book about? So it's a sci-fi novella made up of 8 interconnected short stories. Although you could argue, because they are based on 4 people, you could say that it's just 4 stories broken in half, so there's 8 parts. Each part is roughly 30 to 40 pages long, except for the middle one, which is 68 pages long. Because of these lengths, I found this book really easy to jump in and out of whenever I had a spare minute. So who are the main characters? So first we visit Edwin. He's a young Englishman who's feeling slightly disheartened with the state of society and also doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. Due to his controversial opinions, he's forced to relocate to Canada, and we follow his epic journey from East Coast to West Coast and all that he discovers along the way. I think it's fair to say that his part is more of an introduction to the book as a whole, because although he does have his own storyline, it doesn't add too much to the plot, and although we do visit him at the end of the book, it's more to tie up loose ends and provide a conclusion for his story. Next up we have Morella and Vincent, and although it's called Morella and Vincent, this story follows Morella and touches upon her friendship with Vincent. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but apparently Vincent is the main character of another novel by this author called The Glass Hotel. In The Glass Hotel, Vincent goes missing, and in this book we see Morella trying to find her and also deal with the consequences of her disappearance. As you can see, when we revisit their story, it says file corruption rather than a year, so no spoilers, but we kind of do, but we kind of don't revisit them. The final part of their story is one of the shortest in this book, however it does provide some much needed resolution for one of the overarching plots of this book as a whole. In the third section, we meet Olive, who is a novelist about to embark on her worldwide tour for her upcoming novel. This is set 200 years in the future, where we have colonized the moon. So Olive is not actually from Earth, but from a moon colony called Colony 2. Out of all the characters and all of the sections of this book, I think this one was my least favourite. Mostly because it's just following Olive on her tour, and there's a lot of scenes where she's travelling and new locations, what hotel rooms were like, and it just got a little bit repetitive after a while. At this point, I was also wondering where everything was going, because although there was a tiny thread of a link between this and the previous stories, they just felt like 3 distinct stories with 3 different plot lines. In the 4th section, we jump 400 years into the future, and this section is called Bad Chickens. Now, let me just explain why it's called that. It's based on the phrase, "the chickens are coming home to roost." In the previous story, there was a conversation where someone said, "When the chickens do come home, it's never the good chickens, it's always the bad chickens." This section is the chunkiest out of the whole book, and if the book were a sandwich, this section would definitely be the meat. It's here that we meet who I would describe as the main character of the entire book. This section is the only one written in first person point of view, and through Gaspari, the main character, we finally start to figure out what links all these interconnected stories. Although Gaspari has a section at the end called Anomaly, I would say that the bulk of the story happens in this middle section. Gaspari lives on the same moon colony that Olive used to live in back in the previous story. I really appreciate the author's ability in building up this imaginary futuristic world, whilst also giving us Gaspari's backstory. There's also mentions and snippets from previous stories, such as Olive's novel, which we didn't actually get to see in the previous story, as well as a letter from Edwin. Without revealing too much, Gaspari and his sister Zoe have to get to the bottom of a time travel anomaly. As the plot starts to unravel, and it becomes fairly obvious how the book's going to end, I did find myself thinking initially that it was too simplistic. But actually, once I got to the end, I realised how cleverly the author has weaved together these short stories. The question posed by Gaspari and his sister, and the reason that they're trying to get to the bottom of this mystery, was actually very thought-provoking too. As I mentioned previously, the final part of this book focuses on Gaspari, and I thought it was so well done. It provided a satisfying plot resolution, as well as giving me all the feels. I don't normally read sci-fi, so I don't know if this concept's been done before, but I found it really unique. It was one of those books that even a week after finishing, it was still on my mind. However, saying that, I do have a few minor criticisms. Whilst I did enjoy the writing style, it was quite simplistic, and there was no beautiful prose or anything to really distinguish between the stories. On a similar note, I also wish the characters had more personal descriptions, such as their appearance, or maybe something that makes them unique. Maybe one of them had a deep voice, or maybe one of them had a favourite food. Small details like this would have made them more memorable and more personable to me. Because of these points, I would give this book 4 stars. However, because of its uniqueness, I think it deserves 5. For anyone looking for an easy sci-fi read, I think this book is perfect, not only because of its small size, but also the concept itself is not too complex.